For a good chunk of the afternoon yesterday, there was a young man who was in very serious Bible study and speaking of the church and understanding the Word of God in ways that he never had before. And last night, after we dismissed, Ryan Jones from Columbus, Georgia, was baptized into Christ. And he was a little bit nervous about being up in front of all of you guys, right? But I told him, I said, well, if there ever was a time when you had some privacy in the baptistry, it is right now. And so that all went on. A lot of us were still here last night. But is Ryan here this morning? I don't know if they're here yet. I thought I might have seen him. Well, anyways, I'm pretty sure he didn't have to go back home. So we'll see him this morning, and be sure to rejoice with our brother in Christ. We have been speaking all week about all weekend about the subject of apathy. This idea of, you know what, I just don't really care. I mean, I've got other things to think about. I've got other things to talk about. I've got other things to be involved about. I mean, just this idea that I don't have time to be bothered with these spiritual things. Whether you want to talk about the general topic, or you want to talk about the purity that we have, or you want to talk about the nature of the church, or even just the very idea of truth. It is a general attitude that, well, it's just prevailing almost everywhere that we look. I just don't even care about it. It's the reason that there are a lot of people who aren't here this morning. There are a lot of people who are here this morning, aren't there? I mean, and this is great, but you know there are a lot more people who aren't here this morning, and they just don't even care. They're just not even taking the time to think about what ought to be the most important things in their life. And so our goal throughout this weekend has been to, in some small way, in whatever way we found possible, to light a fire within your lives, but within our lives, to say, you know what, I do care. I do care about my God. I do care about His will. I do care about His Word. And I don't just want those to be words that come out of my mouth. I want those to be things that describe me in every way and in every place that I go. I want people to be able to look at me and say, there's somebody who cares about the Lord Jesus Christ. I want people to see that when they look at me. And so this morning, I want us to think about another avenue that sometimes we struggle with in regards to what we care about. Too many times people have this idea, or this, it's probably not as nearly as much of an idea or a practice that basically says, you know what, I just don't care. I don't really care about anybody else. I'm here for myself. And you be here for yourself, and I just don't want to be bothered with you. And I don't want to be bothered with your problems or with your issues or with your weirdness. I got enough of that myself. If I was to ask you what the most important commandment in the Bible is, there's a lot of them, right? There's a lot of commandments in the Bible. What would you say is the most important commandment in the Bible? See, this man reads his Bible over here, right? Jesus says when people came to him and they asked him that question that people have been asking for a long time, they said, what is the greatest commandment? Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy mind. You need to be concerned about God. It's one of the reasons that I love the singing at Yes Weekend, because it's one of those moments where in our minds, I hope we purposefully understand we are singing praises to God. And I understand what lies behind everything that every one of the speakers is saying, but uniquely, as we worship God in song, you're not singing for me, I'm not singing for you. I'm singing a God who is worthy, who is holy. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul and with all thy mind. And everything else, Jesus isn't saying nothing else matters. He's saying everything else is built upon this idea. Because if we miss this, if we miss our relationship with God, our understanding of who God is, nothing else is going to matter. If you don't love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and all thy soul and all thy mind, then you're not going to care a thing in the world about purity. You're not going to care a thing in the world about the church. You're not going to care a thing in the world about what the Bible says. So Jesus says, you got to get this. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all of thy heart and all of thy soul and all of thy mind. And if I could get something across to you in this room and to the world around us, it is to help people to fall in love with God. To be passionately devoted with all of their heart and all of their soul and all of their mind. Every time someone walks down this aisle, whatever the lesson is or the topic is, whatever it is that they're struggling with, whatever it is that they're repenting of, what they're really saying is, I'm just desperate to be right with God. And so hopefully throughout this weekend and throughout your life, you spend some time and you focus just on me and God. I got to spend some time thinking about Wes and God. When it's just the two of us, you got to spend some time thinking about Athen and God, right? You got to spend some time thinking about Bella and God, and for not everybody else, but just me and God. And when you do that, when I really dwell and I think about God, and I become desperate to please Him. I become desperate to reflect Him. I become desperate to show the love that I have for Him. It is in that moment. It is in that moment that we will see what springs from it. For Jesus says this is the greatest commandment, right? You shall love the Lord thy God with all of thy heart, with all of thy soul, with all of thy strength. And then He says, and the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. If you love God, you will love other people. Isn't that what He's saying? If you love God, you may be an introvert, you may be an extrovert. Okay? You may have this personality, you may have that personality. I'm just telling you, if you really love God, you will love other people. If you love God, you will care about other people. Does not every parent in this room understand that? Do we not? If someone really cares about me, listen, do you know how you can show that? You love my children, right? You love my creation, and in doing so, you're reflecting the love that you have for me. Why is it? Why is it that I can tell you? I can tell you every single person who has been to one of my son's football games that wasn't there because there was someone else there. They were just there because my son was playing ball. Why can I tell you that? Why can I tell you? I can tell you who came to my daughter's play, who was just there for her. Parents, can you tell me those things? About your life, about your children? Yeah, you can. Because it sends this message loud and clear. Hey, I don't have any other reason to be here, but I'm here because I love you. I'm interested in your children, and that sends a message to me as a parent. God says, love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy mind. But that's not just like a mission statement we put on the wall. From that pyramid that Mr. David was talking about last night, from that flows this way of life. And the second, everything else is going to flow from this too, is love the Lord thy God. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. That's what I want to talk about this morning. Because we live in an incredibly self-centered world. Now, that's not new, is it? It's not. And it's different today, but it's not new. Jesus has, 2,000 years ago, Jesus was saying, thou shalt love thy neighbor as yourself. Right? 2,000 years ago, Paul was saying to every husband in this room, love your, in Ephesians 5, you love your wife as you love yourself. And everybody understood what that meant because, listen, every one of us knows what it means to love ourselves. That's not new. But we live in this world where it's becoming easier and easier to escape into our own little world and never come out of it. We talk about the selfie generation. Look at me, look at me, look at me. And I think some people overstate that. Different lesson for a different time. But there's no doubt that it exists. How many of you, this new phenomenon, and we've always had like headphones, but there's this new thing, and when he was talking about things that didn't used to be, that are today, where people just walk around with headphones everywhere that they go, right? We got earbuds, we got, what are those things, like expensive ones? AirPods, right? You guys know, my kid's dad's too cheap, but people just walk around everywhere they go, right? In their own little world. Doesn't matter what's going on around them. Doesn't matter who's doing what. Parents, you ever tried to talk to your kids? Right? I mean, my kids got headphones too. Hey, I'm talking to you. Right? I mean, right, son? Is that right? Yeah. What? And they're just in your own little world. And I mean, I do this. I don't think I'm bebopping to the same thing that they are, but I do the same thing, right? I mean, I put my headphones in and I'm just living in my own little world. It's in that world, it's in that context that we live in that where it's just so easy for me just to go through my life and I don't have to interact. I don't have to interact with other people. Hey, you know what? How many of you guys hate going to Walmart? Right? Some of you guys, you're teenagers, like, I don't know. Every mom in the room, do you guys hate going to Walmart? Right? It's not because you're not saving money, because you are. That's why you keep going back. Why do you hate going to Walmart? The people, right? I mean, they make videos about the people of Walmart, right? And I'm not going to show, you've all watched those, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, you may be on film somewhere, right? But you know what? We don't even go to Walmart anymore. We have to be home between 2 and 3 today because a person is going to come and they're going to deliver our groceries, right? They're going to deliver our groceries, and they're probably not even going to speak to me when they come. They may not even speak the same language. Fine with me. Give me the phone. I'll sign it. Thank you. On about my day. I'm just saying it's easier and easier to live life in my own little bubble. And Jesus says that's a problem. Not that Walmart delivery is a problem. That's a great thing. Right? But it's a problem when I just retreat into my own little space because that's easier, because I'm more comfortable there. Jesus says, love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy mind. Oh, and I'm not just saying there, it's not just you and God. It's not just, okay, I'm going to go off and I'm going to form my own church somewhere, and it's just going to be me and God, and it's going to be the Church of West, right? What kind of church would that be? That'd be pretty messed up. But that's what a lot of people do. They don't put a sign out front. He says, no, the second one, then you got to think about this, is you need to be loving your neighbor as much as you love yourself. John makes this connection in 1 John chapter 4. And he said, beloved, he's writing to you and me, right? Beloved, let us love one another. Why? For love is of God. And everyone who loves is born of God and knows God, and he who does not love does not know God. For God is love. Now just kind of walk through what John is saying there and the connection. He's saying the same thing, by the way, that Jesus was saying when he answered the question about the greatest commandment. Okay? He says, Christians, if you're going to look like Christ, you need to be loving one another. Yeah, but why? Because they're not very lovable. You guys know anybody who's not very lovable? I mean, some people are lovable, right? But some people are not quite so much, right? Nobody wants to admit that, right? It's the truth. Some people are easier to love than others. I know that. I know on the spectrum, listen, I'm not a hugger, okay? Some of these people that, some of you guys have preachers and they're like, hey, give me a hug, right? That's probably not what I'm going to be doing. I'm not a bad person, but I know on the spectrum I'm not as easy to love. John says, love one another. You find some way to express love to one another. You find some way to send the message, I love you. Why would I do that? Why would I do that? Because God is love. Because God is love. And if you're born of God, if you know God, that is what you do. That's just what Christians do. Do we believe that? We say, what does a Christian look like? What does a Christian do? We may answer that in a lot of different ways, but it is, and it may be more than this, but it's never less than we are people who love one another. Because that's what God is. And when we don't have love, you read 1 Corinthians 13, that's talking about our relationship with other people. When we don't have love, we don't look like Christ. You can go out there and give your body to be burned at the stake. If you don't have love, you wasted your body. You can give away every dime that you have. And if you don't have love for one another, you wasted your money. It was nothing. That's what he says, right? We love because our God loves. The one that we say that we love with all of our heart and all of our soul and all of our mind. If I really love Him, I love His children. I love His creation. That's what Christians do. And if I don't do that, he who does not love, it's kind of like one of these in-your-faces, like a Bill Davis, right? I can't yell like that. My children would crawl into the pew if I did. But this idea where John just lays it down, he says, he who does not love does not know God, for God is love. Don't be telling me about how you're a Christian if you don't love other people. Because you're not. You're not of God. God. He who does not love, you don't know God. See, love is that thing that you do. It's a way that we treat people. And I know there are different ways that we can express that, but we better make sure that we're expressing that. For beloved, all the way down to verse 11, he says, if God so loved us, we ought to love one another. You know the words of Jesus in John 13 and verse 34 and 35, right? A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this, all will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. So let us think about this for just a moment, and let's narrow the conversation, right? We can talk about the love that we have for the world, and we've talked a little bit about that, and we'll get to it. But I want us to narrow the conversation. Let's just talk about the body of Christ. Young people, let's just talk about your youth group. Let's talk about your peers and the relationship that you have there. Jesus says that this is the one thing that's going to make us stand out in a world of darkness. Now, once again, we can give a list of a great number of things that make us stand out in a world of darkness, right? That people may or may not see. Most of us are dealing with all of those things. We're struggling with all of those things. There are those. You go into your school. You go into your life, and you say, you know what? I don't drink alcohol, but everybody else does. I don't put my body on display, but everybody else does. I don't use foul language, but everybody else does. Now, when you do those things trying to reflect the very image of Christ, correct? People might see that. People might see that as light in a world of darkness. But I'm going to tell you what Jesus says is really going to make a difference. What's going to make all of those things even more powerful as you stand out as light in a world of darkness. And that is actually loving others. Because we live in a world, we've already said it, we've all experienced it. And if we don't talk about ourselves, let's just talk about other people for a minute. That's a lot easier, right? We live in a very self-centered world where people are focused on their own desires. People are focused on themselves. And when you show up and you say, no, I'm going to be focused on you, does that get people's attention? Of course it does. It's a paradigm shift. It opens up those doors to talk about all those moral issues that otherwise the door's going to be slammed shut in our face. Because we're going about and you're saying, you know what? You are going to look out for you, right? And you are going to look out for you. And you are going to look out for you. That's just how it's done. Look out for number. I can't tell you how many people I had that gave me advice as I was in my teen years about who I need to look out for. Number one, right? You need to look out for number one. And we'd laugh and we'd pat each other on the back, right? Anybody ever get that advice? I've got that advice from a lot of people. They weren't thinking about what they were saying. They were just parroting what makes sense. You look out for you. 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 You look out for her. Now, when that happens, you think you're going to get her attention? Hey, how come you're not looking out for yourself? Because that comes real natural to us, right? But all of a sudden, is anybody here interested in people who are interested in them? Yeah, we all are. And it stands out because most of us are interested in ourselves. So if you want to be interested in me, well, I kind of like that because I like me, right? And if I want to be interested in you, you kind of like that because you kind of like you. But people just don't do that, do they? Why don't people care about me? Why don't people care about what's going on in my life? Why don't people? Listen, because they care about themselves. And Jesus says, here's the paradigm shift that the church brings to you, it ought to bring to you, that your congregation ought to bring to you, that your youth group ought to bring to you, where all of a sudden this is a place where people actually care about each other. That's what I want to be a part of. I have no desire to be a part of a church where everybody's just looking out for themselves and they don't really care if I'm there or not. I don't want to be a part of a church like that. Neither do you. But some people are. And some people are struggling with it. And some people are struggling with the very image of God Himself because people have perverted what the church is supposed to be. It is an incredible tool. I think we talked about this on Friday night, or maybe Saturday morning, I don't remember which one. But it's this incredible tool even for reaching the lost. When we're so different, how many of us, I'm just curious, how many of us ever feel like, I just don't fit in? Anybody ever feel that way? Yeah? Me and a couple people? No? Is that it? All the rest of you people just perfectly feel like you fit in everywhere that you go? Seriously? I don't believe that for a second. I'm seeing a lot of people that are like, I really don't want to admit this, right? Because I want to act like, no, this is what we want. We want to act like, well, I'm fine. If you don't need me, I don't need you. Then you can just get over it and I'll just go on about my... Come on. I can't tell you how many times, even in a crowd full of people, I'm like, I don't know where I fit. I don't know these people, and I mean, I think I fit. I don't know where I fit, and I'm just kind of different. I mean, I have different thoughts and different interests, and I mean, if I could be real honest, sometimes I'm just a little bit weird. I mean, I know that, and I'm just telling you, I think if we were being honest, the majority of the hands in the room would go up. And there would be some people that everybody looks at and they say, well, they don't have those problems. Their hand goes up too. I think we all struggle with that on some degree or another. But then we come to this place. We're supposed to come to this place where we do fit. Where all of a sudden I'm living out there in the world and they're saying, you're a little bit weird, Wes. I don't know if I want you in my circle. Right? You're a little bit to this, you're a little bit to that, you're all these things, but all of a sudden I come to the church and we say, you know what? I know what you are. I know you're not like me, but we love you anyways. Not because I don't know you're a little weird, because if you are, people know it, right? I've had to come to grips with that. But we love you anyways because Christ loves us anyways. How many people do you think you know that want to be a part of something like that? Who are out there floating in the world, not wondering exactly where it is that they fit. That's the love of Christ. I'm telling you, it's one of the great tools that Jesus says that we can reach the lost with. I will never forget when we had a visitor to services once, and some of our young people went and they brought their child, and they had them sit with our young people. Man, we're glad that you're here. We want you to be here. And they were sitting right up here, and the mother who was sitting in the back, she took a picture of it. Now, if I take a picture of my kids at church, I'm probably documenting something, right? Oh, we're going to talk later, and you're not going to deny it either, right? But she took a picture of it, and she wasn't documenting bad behavior. She took a picture of it, and she posted it to social media. And I thought, what power. Here was a mother who said, we went to this place. She didn't use these words. That's what she was saying. We went to this place, and my child, who struggles everywhere with relationships, was welcomed with open arms. They were shown love. Is that not powerful? Is it? Don't we all want that? That's kind of getting tingles just kind of thinking about it, because I want to be a part of something like that. Doesn't mean I have to become like you or you become like me. We're just going to follow in Christ's ways. There's a word, young people, that I hate. I used to love it, and I've spent a lot of time in my life in pursuit of it, but it frustrates me, and I hate's a strong word, but that's the one I'm going with. You want to know what it is? Cool. Now, most of you think, well, he ain't never been cool, right? And you may have a point, but I've tried to be cool. Some of you guys are cool. I'm looking at, I'm not going to embarrass you, but I could pick you out. Like, you just, you know what? Everywhere you go, right? You're just cool. And this idea of, you know what? This is something, and it's even hard to describe, but you all know what it is, right? This is something that's valuable. This is something that's important. We want to give off that idea. In our Bible class yesterday, we talked about some of the shoes that people were wearing. I said that if my kid ever asked me to buy those expensive shoes, I'd be like, forget that, right? Like my mama, she bought them for me, and you know what I'm doing now? I'm buying these crazy price shoes that are ugly, right? They are, but it's all because my kids are like, well, that's cool, Dad. You know what? Because when I walk into school and people see me wearing those, and I remember feeling this way, right? When I walk into school and I'm wearing those, people are going to say, that's cool. He's cool, right? We do that with our clothes. We do that with the places that we go and the ways that we act. But sometimes coolness, it filters down even into our relationships. Because some people are cool, right? And if I can associate with the cool people, then I'll be cool. They've made movies about this premise, right? If I can just associate with the cool people, then everybody else will think I'm cool, and I really want to be cool. Anybody relate to that? Anybody old enough to actually confess that? I know the young people, you're going to be in denial of it, but I'm just telling you, I know that's where you live, because it's where I lived. But as I try to be cool for everybody, it creates this dynamic where sometimes people get pushed down. People who aren't cool. I ain't going to point those people out either, but do you know who I'm talking about? They're not as cool as me. They're not as this as me. They're not as that. And there may be multiple reasons that we come across, but the truth is, if people see me being friends with this person, do you know what they're going to think? They're going to think I'm not cool. And I cannot have people thinking I'm not cool because I am cool. Right? That'll be quoted somewhere all over the internet, me screaming that I'm cool. But so we say, you go over there. Does that ever happen in your youth group? Does that ever happen in your congregations? You just think about that and think about whether you want to be honest or not. But I know it's happened to me. I think I told you the story a couple years ago, but I always think about it this time of year. Because I told you I was cool. You don't believe it, but I was. Everybody knew it. My wife's not in here to correct us. She's the only one lived in Southeast Missouri at that time, okay? But I thought I was, and I really wanted to be. Dexter Youth Rally, 1993, set up kind of like this. We went for some entertainment, and I was cool, and there was another guy who wasn't cool, who was in our youth group, and he was kind of following us around. And I remember looking at him, and so, as he tagged along, because he was trying to be cool too, right? He was. He tagged along, and I said, would you quit sitting with us? That's what your preacher said to somebody else. I think about that every year this time because it haunts me. Because I wonder about the damage that might have been done there. I wonder about the damage, and that man's gone on to be a good, faithful Christian and a leader in the church. But you know what? You know what I'd be thinking about doing if you said something like that to me? Fine. You don't want me? I'm out. Not even knowing that I'm not just leaving you. I'm leaving the church. I'm leaving the bride of Christ. How many people walk away from the church because they don't feel like anybody loves them? They don't feel like anybody cares about them. I know that can be overstated. I know expectations can be unreasonable. But Jesus says we have to understand this, because this is how people are going to know that we are His disciples. If someone says, I love God, and hates his brother, he's a liar. For he does not love his brother whom he has seen. How can he love God whom he has not seen? Does that ever happen? Does that ever happen in our youth groups? I'm going to answer that for you. It's happened in almost every single youth group that I've ever been a part of. I know it does. Well, there are cool people, there are uncool people. Where, you know what, are there people in your youth group that you just don't interact with because you live in two very different social worlds? I mean, you come into the same building together, but you just don't interact. You don't say it, but I'm cool, and you're not. And we pass by, and I'm not talking about, you know what, we're walking past and I was busy and I didn't say anything. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about week after week, we just don't interact. We don't talk. I don't speak to those people. I don't spend time with those people. We don't engage with those people. Is that ever happening? Does that ever happen? And if you do engage with those people, the other cool people are in the background, the other people that are trying to be cool, and they're laughing at the fact that you're associating with that person. Does that ever happen? Now, you can either look at me and shake your head up and down, or you can look at the floor. Because I know it happens. I've seen it happen to young men. I've seen it happen to young ladies. And guys, we got to get this straight, because this kind of junk doesn't just happen to teenagers. Those teenagers grow up into adults. And adults treat each other that way. And we're in services every first day of the week because I'm going to go to church, because that's what you do, but we don't care about each other. At least we're not showing those things. And we send the message to people. I know this can be overstated, but we send the message to people, I don't really care if you're here. If you weren't here, it wouldn't change my life at all. Week after week after week, it's just what we do. Well, you have to be here because you're a Christian and I'm a Christian. Are we really? If this describes us, here's what I want to say. If this describes us, I don't really care about you. Your soul is in danger. Your soul is in danger if that's the relationship that you have with your brethren in Christ. Isn't that what Jesus is saying? Quit telling me about how you love the Lord if you don't love each other. You're just lying to yourself. We got to get that. If we're going to be this bright and shining light that the world looks at and says, those people are something different. They got lots of differences, but they love each other and they work together and they engage each other and they care about each other. I want some of that. But instead the world is looking and saying, yeah, they're different just like us, and they look like they don't like each other either. Why would I want that? See the connection? We love God. We love each other. Guys, I don't want to be cool. I want to be like Christ. You can quote that one. I don't want to be cool. I want to be like Christ. That's the mind of Christ that Paul talks about in Philippians chapter 2. Let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness of mind. Our world says, build yourself up. Paul says, in lowliness of mind. Quit thinking so much of yourself and worried what other people think about you. You humble yourself by thinking about God. You're going to feel good about yourself if you look at me. But you look at God, it's going to humble you, and let each esteem others better than himself. Right? I'm not looking out for me, I'm looking out for her. He's not looking out for himself, he's looking out for him. That's what the church is supposed to look like. In a lowliness of mind, let others esteem others better than himself. Look out not merely for your own interest, but also for the interest of others. That's the mind of Christ. How does that play out? In very small ways, doesn't it? I mean, just in our day-to-day interactions, we can think of some big picture stuff. Why do people take children into their homes that are not their own? Why do people raise children that they didn't create these children? Why do people adopt babies? Why do people bring in foster children? Why do grandparents bring their grandchildren into their home? Because at some point or another, they looked at those children and they said, what they need is more important than what I want. Why are your youth leaders, why are they giving up their weekends and their vacation to be here and to go to vacation Bible schools and go to church camps? Because at some point they looked and they said, well, what they need is more important than what I want. Why do people move halfway around the world in order to take the gospel to lost places and lost people that they're a lot harder than this world? Why do you do that? Because at some point they look at those people and they say, what those people need, the gospel, it's more important than what I want. This is the mind of Christ, who looked at us and said, what they need, it's more important than what I want. And we say, well, I would love them if they would do this, if they would do this, if they would do this. Forget it. That's not Christianity. Christ doesn't look at us and say, well, I'll love you once you do this, once you do this, once you do this. If He did, every one of us in this room would be lost. He came while we were still sinners. And if you want to look at the person that you're struggling to love and you want to say, I know they have a sin problem, okay, love them anyways. Don't send a message, I could care less about you. You can go all day long and say, well, they're this, they're this, and you may be right, you may be wrong, but you better not send a message that I just wish you would go away. Because that's not what Christ did. To them, or to you, or to me. Whether you're in a youth group, or you're a leader in the church, if we call ourselves a Christian, this is what Christianity looks like. To live is Christ. To whatever extreme we have to take this to. You keep reading Philippians 2, who was obedient even to the point of death, even death on the cross. And we're struggling with talking to each other at times. Don't we? We're struggling to talk to each other, and Jesus says, here's the example, you die for each other. Do we really care about each other? Are we really, really willing to do anything that's going to be difficult for us to do? I was thinking about this lesson. Yesterday, and everything was going on. Everybody was leaving for lunch, and I'm not telling this to any kind of brag on myself, I promise. But I'm telling you this because it just was in my head and it motivated me. So you guys are leaving and people are cleaning up, and I told you guys there's a lot of that stuff that goes on. And I see one of our men who's been working here all day, and he says, do you know where there's a plunger? Yes, I do. I know where there's a plunger. And, one of you guys did something ungodly to the bathroom back there. I don't know who it was, but we're putting in video cameras outside. And I said, okay, I'll go and get one. And I go to get a plunger, and I'm thinking, well, why should I say, here you go, have fun? And I could give other examples, but so you go in and you take, why? Because that's exactly what I wanted to do yesterday about 4 o'clock. Is that right? No, I don't want to do it at any 4 o'clock, okay? But that's what Christ does. That's what Christ does wherever it leads me. And this will lead us all to different places, right? I mean, it may lead us to, it may lead us to take care of the plumbing issues. It may lead us to take our family and move to a foreign land to share the gospel. And everything in the middle. Right? Because we have this attitude. When I say I love the Lord thy God with all their heart, with all their soul, with all their mind, listen, I know what flows from that. That means I love everybody else. That means when I show up, on a Sunday morning, or I show up at worship, or on a Monday morning at school, or on a Tuesday morning at work, that I'm constantly thinking, what about these people? How can I reach these people? How can I help these people? How can I be the servant? That's what Christ did. That's what Christ did with His life. Paul said this. I love this verse. He said, I will very gladly spend and be spent for your soul. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to give everything in my life, not for me. I'm going to do it for you. And when you have a group of people, and I say, I will be poured out for you. And you say, I'll be poured out for you. Because that's what the church is supposed to look like. That's when we look like Christ. Do we understand that? I guess if I had a desire, to help us understand the love that we ought to have for one another, it would be that we truly understand the love that God has for us. Because if we get it, this is going to take care of itself. And if we don't get it, we can talk for hours and hours and it won't do any good. This is the commandment that we have from Him, that he who loves God must love his brother also. I want you to know God. I want you to be overwhelmed by His presence, by His reality, by His power. I want you to be humbled in His presence. I want you to become desperate to pursue Him with all of your might and all of your soul. I want us to stand before Him and say, who am I? The psalmist said in Psalm 8, what is man that you would even think of me? To get this out of our minds that, man, God and the church, they sure are lucky that I'm here. No, that's wrong. That's sinful. But to say, there is one great God and I love Him with all of my heart and all of my soul and all of my mind. I can't understand why He even cares about me. And out of that lowliness of our mind, understand, I'm just desperate to be His servant in this world. I don't think more of myself than I think of you. I understand who I am next to God. I just want to share with you what I know of Him. I want to share with you what He has shared with me. Whether it be our eternal salvation or it be just the grace that He has given me in good gifts through my life. I want to show you what has been shown to me. I'm not going to stand here and try to explain to you how great I am, because I know it's not true. I'm not going to stand here and try to defend myself, because the truth is, whatever you might say about me and whatever problem you have with me, I know that the truth is a whole lot worse. I'm just going to put one foot in front of the other and make it my mission not to simply love myself, but to love you as much as I love myself. That attitude of caring because He cares is what we're being called to. So we're going to extend the invitation in just a moment. What is our song? Number 667. And if you're looking at yourself and you're saying, you know what? Yep, I'm doing pretty good on the purity thing. Haven't done this with my boyfriend. Haven't done that with my girlfriend. Haven't looked at anything I shouldn't look at in months now. I'm doing great with that. You can look at it and say, you know what? I care about the church. I've got all my doctrine right. I understand the one church. I understand denominationalism. I understand how we worship. Got all my P's, all my Q's, all my T's crossed, all my I's dotted. Got all that just right because I care about that. Yep, I understand the truth. I preach the truth. I share the truth because it's important to me. Wonderful. But throughout all of those things, if you say, but the truth is, I really haven't cared about much other than myself. There have been people who that when I've engaged them, maybe in my youth group, maybe in my school, maybe in my congregation, and I might have sent a lot of messages, but I didn't send them the message that I love them because Christ loves me. That's what Christianity looks like. If you have the need to respond to that, you come as we stand and as we sing.
Power in the blood. Power in the blood.